7 life lessons I had to learn the hard way, so you don't have to. There's a certain kind of lesson life doesn't whisper to you gently. It doesn't show up in a book or a classroom or tucked inside a well-meaning quote. No, some lessons come at you like a storm, loud, messy, undeniable. They arrive after the tears, the silence, the sleepless nights, the moments you thought would break you. And the strange thing is, even though they cost us more than we thought we could afford, they often leave behind something priceless. I used to believe that wisdom was something you gained with age. That if you just kept showing up, doing your best, being kind, checking the right boxes, life would reward you with peace and clarity. But I've learned, painfully and personally, that wisdom doesn't always arrive with candles on a birthday cake. Sometimes it shows up the morning after everything falls apart. It shows up when the people you trusted walk away, when the thing you thought you couldn't live without disappears, when the road you were counting on suddenly vanishes beneath your feet. This isn't going to be some shiny list of life advice wrapped in nice words. This is a reflection on the real stuff. The scars, the patterns I wish I'd broken sooner, the boundaries I didn't know how to set, the truth I ignored because it was easier to pretend than to face it. I'm not here to preach. I'm here to sit with you like an old friend has been through it and is finally ready to speak plainly. Some of these lessons I learned too late, others just in time. All of them reshaped the way I see people, love, ambition, silence, and myself. And maybe, just maybe, if I lay them out here honestly, you won't have to learn them the hard way. Or if you already are, you'll at least feel less alone. So if you're in that place where life feels heavier than it should, where you're questioning everything you once held certain, where you're quietly asking yourself, why does it have to be this hard? I see you. You're not broken. You're becoming. And sometimes, the becoming hurts before it heals. Let me tell you about the 7 lessons life handed me, not gently, but truthfully. Because maybe hearing them now can save you a few cracks later. Or maybe they'll help you see the ones you already carry a little differently. Either way, you're not walking through this alone. Let's begin. It took me years to understand this one. And not because I didn't hear it before. People said it all the time. You can't help someone who won't help themselves. Yeah, sure. It sounded right. But when it was someone I loved, when I could see their potential, feel their pain, and imagine the better version of their life so clearly, that was a whole different thing. I used to believe that if I just loved someone enough, supported them enough, stayed patient, kind, forgiving, eventually they'd turn a corner. I told myself it was loyalty, commitment, faith, but deep down, it was fear. Fear of letting go. Fear that if I stopped trying, they'd fall further. Fear that if I left, it would mean I failed them. What I didn't realize is that while I was busy trying to fix someone else's wounds, I was bleeding too. You don't get to save people from themselves. You can walk beside them, you can hold space, you can offer every tool in the world, but you cannot make someone change. Not if they're not ready. Not if they don't see a problem. Not if they're comfortable in their chaos. And when you keep pouring yourself into someone who's draining you, you don't become a savior, you become collateral damage. One of the hardest things I've ever had to do was love someone enough to let go. To stop trying to solve them. To stop confusing compassion with self-destruction. Here's what I've learned. You can love someone and still leave. You can hope for someone and still protect your peace. You can offer help, but you don't owe your entire life as a lifeboat. People don't change because you wish they would. They change when they decide to. And until then, your job isn't to fix them. It's to stay whole. I used to think opportunity was sacred. That any open door was a gift, and I should feel lucky just to have been invited. So I walked through doors that weren't meant for me. Said yes when I should have said, not now. Took on roles, relationships, Responsibilities because they were available. Because I didn't want to miss out. You ever walk through a door and immediately feel the energy drop in your chest? That silent tug in your gut that says, "This isn't it." I ignored that feeling more times than I can count. And I paid for it with sleepless nights, tangled commitments, and a version of myself that always felt a little off. Not every door is meant to be opened. Some are distractions wearing disguises. Some are detours that look like promotions. Some are invitations into stories that were never yours to live. But here's the tricky part. Sometimes the wrong doors look really right. They come with compliments, money, security, attention, even love. And yet, underneath it all, they quietly ask you to shrink, to compromise, to forget a part of yourself at the threshold. One day, I started asking a different question. Not can I do this? But should I? Not what will I gain? But what will it cost me? And that changed everything. Discernment is a muscle. It grows stronger when you listen to your inner no. It matures when you learn that just because something is good doesn't mean it's yours. Just because a person is kind doesn't mean they're your future. Just because a role pays well doesn't mean it honors your soul. There is power in being selective, in walking past the open door when your peace says, keep going. You don't have to explore every option. You just have to trust the ones that truly align. The ones that feel like freedom, not pressure. Expansion, not erosion. Home, not hustle. There was a time I thought silence meant weakness. That staying quiet meant you had nothing to say, nothing to defend, nothing to fight for. I've always had words. Always knew how to make my point, craft the perfect reply, hit back when someone struck low. But life, in its poetic irony, gave me a lesson I wasn't ready for. I was in the middle of a falling out with someone I loved deeply. They accused, twisted, rewrote history with a version that painted me as the villain. And I had proof, receipts, messages, all the right words to make them see the truth. And yet, for some reason I still can't fully explain, I didn't send any of it. Not because I didn't care, but because I finally understood. Some people don't want the truth. They want a story that comforts their ego. They want noise, drama, a chance to pull you back into the chaos with them. Silence was my protection that day. My boundary. My decision to stop justifying who I am to people who never really wanted to understand. We live in a world where everyone has something to say, where being heard feels like a right, where clapping back is a sport. But silence? That takes strength. It says, I don't owe you my energy. It says, I see the game, and I'm not playing. Sometimes silence is the only language arrogance doesn't understand. Sometimes it's the way you reclaim your dignity. Sometimes it's how you rise. And here's what I've learned. Not every battle is yours. Not every insult needs an answer. Not every wound needs to be aired out in public. You can be silent and still powerful. You can choose stillness without surrender. You can walk away and still be standing tall. The loudest person isn't always the strongest, and the quietest one. Sometimes they've just finally found their peace. Nobody talks about the betrayal that comes with love. Not the kind that comes from strangers or passing acquaintances, that stings, but it fades. No, I'm talking about the kind of hurt that only someone you let all the way in can deliver. The kind that sits in your chest like a weight you didn't ask for. The kind that rewrites the way you see love entirely. It happens slowly, almost imperceptibly. At first, I made excuses. They didn't mean it. They're just stressed. It's just a bad moment, but the moments stacked up. Words that should have never been said. Promises that were broken with a straight face. And all the while, I held on. Because love makes you believe it's your job to hold on. To forgive and forgive again, and then some more. Until one day, I realized I had forgiven so much that there was nothing left of me. Here's the brutal truth. The people you love the most can hurt you the most. because they know where your soft spots are, because you gave them the blueprint to your heart. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes they use it against you, consciously or not. It's not just about romantic love either. It can be a parent, a sibling, a friend you've known since childhood. And when they fail you, when they wound you, it cuts deeper than anything else ever could. But here's what I had to learn the hard way. Love doesn't mean accepting harm. Loyalty doesn't mean tolerating emotional wounds. And forgiveness? It doesn't always mean reconciliation. You're allowed to walk away from people you love. You are allowed to set boundaries with those who share your blood. You are allowed to protect your peace even if it means disappointing someone who once meant everything. And if you're carrying the kind of pain that doesn't make sense because they were supposed to love you, I want you to know this: you are not weak for feeling broken. You are not foolish for loving deeply. You are human. And healing from that kind of wound, it doesn't make you bitter, it makes you brave. For too long, I measured my worth by how many people clapped when I spoke, smiled when I walked in, agreed when I shared my thoughts. I'd bend, shape-shift, soften, dull myself just to stay likable. Approval was my addiction, and I chased it like it was oxygen. But you can only twist yourself into so many shapes before you forget your original form. I remember the moment it snapped. I had just said yes to something I didn't want to do again, just to keep the peace, just to avoid disappointing someone, just to be seen as the good one. And afterward, I sat alone in the car, staring at myself in the mirror, and I didn't recognize the person looking back. When you live for approval, you become a prisoner to everyone else's expectations. You lose sleep over what they think. You replay conversations, trying to edit yourself into something more acceptable. You dilute your truth just to stay invited. And the wildest part? No matter how much you give, it's never enough. Because the goalpost of approval keeps moving. People love you when you fit their needs. They cheer you when you reflect their values. But the second you step out of line, stand in your truth, or say no, that applause gets quieter. That's when I started asking a new question. Is this costing me my peace? Because peace is quiet, but it's powerful. It doesn't always look impressive, but it feels like freedom. And once you taste it, you can't go back. I lost some people when I stopped trying to impress them. When I started saying no without apology. When I stopped explaining my choices and just started living them. But I gained something so much greater, my self-respect. You don't need everyone's approval to be at peace. You just need your own. And trust me, once you find it, you won't trade it for applause ever again. They always say, just give it time. And while it sounds comforting, it's not always true. Time alone doesn't heal all wounds. If anything, some wounds get louder in the silence. Some things you thought you buried come roaring back when the noise dies down. There were nights I waited for the pain to soften, just because a few weeks or months had passed. But it didn't. Not on its own. Healing isn't passive. It's not something that just happens because the calendar pages flip. It's something you have to work through, sometimes with tears, sometimes with therapy, sometimes with hard conversations you have with yourself at 2 a.m. But while time doesn't heal everything, it does something else. It reveals. It shows you who was real and who was just playing a part. It shows you what mattered and what was just noise. It reveals motives, uncovers intentions, and clarifies the things that once confused you. And most of all, it shows you yourself, who you were then, who you are now, and who you're becoming. With time, I saw the relationships that were built on obligation, not love. I saw the jobs that looked shiny but stole my soul. I saw the patterns in myself I had kept blaming others for. Time gave me distance, and that distance gave me truth. So no, time doesn't heal all wounds, but it does make them visible in a different light. And sometimes, that new perspective is what begins the healing. If you're hurting now and waiting for time to work its magic, don't just wait. Be present. Be honest. Be intentional. Sit with your pain. Talk to it. Learn from it. And let time reveal what you're meant to see, not just about others, but about yourself. The truth always comes, sometimes slowly, sometimes painfully, but it always shows up. And when it does, don't turn away. That truth is the first step toward real, lasting peace. There's a quiet danger in the things you let slide. The little comments you brush off, the late-night anxiety you justify, the apology you never get, but accept anyway. The behavior you said you'd never put up with, but now somehow you are. It starts small. A raised voice, a missed promise, a paycheck that's always a little late, a friend who only calls when they need something, a relationship where you feel like you're always proving your worth. You tell yourself it's temporary, that things will change, that you're being too sensitive or too demanding, or not patient enough. But here's the truth. Every time you let something unacceptable slide, you're teaching yourself how to be treated. I didn't want to admit it at first, that my standards had slipped, that I was swallowing things that were slowly eroding my self-respect, that I was calling it grace when it was really fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of being alone, fear of what would happen if I finally said no more. But the longer you tolerate the wrong things, the more they become your normal. And soon, you forget what it felt like to be whole, to be respected, to feel safe in your own skin. Don't wake up one day and suddenly become bitter or resentful or exhausted. You get there piece by piece, decision by decision, silence by silence. You become what you tolerate. And when I finally had enough, when I looked around and realized I didn't recognize my life or my voice, I had to claw my way back, relearn how to say no, rebuild the boundaries I had let crumble, remind myself that I was allowed to ask for more, that I didn't have to accept crumbs just because I used to be starving. It's not about being harsh. It's about being honest. It's about choosing environments, people, and experiences that mirror your values instead of eroding them. So ask yourself, what am I tolerating that's slowly becoming me? Because if you want to change your life, sometimes the first step isn't adding something new, it's removing what never belonged in the first place. You are allowed to raise your standards. You are allowed to leave. You are allowed to grow beyond the limits someone else tried to place on you. And the moment you stop tolerating the things that hurt you is the moment you start becoming the person you were always meant to be. If even one of these lessons hit a little too close to home, I want to say this as gently and as clearly as I can. You're not late. You're not broken. And you're not weak for still figuring it out. We don't get through life untouched. We all have bruises we hide, regrets we carry quietly, choices we wish we could go back and do over. But we also have the chance right here, right now, to make the next part different. To pause, to choose better, to speak up, to walk away, to begin again. I know what it's like to sit in the aftermath of hard lessons, to feel like the world just pulled the rug out from under you, to wonder how you missed the signs, to be angry at yourself for letting it go on too long. But hear me, awareness is the beginning of freedom. And you're more aware now than you were before. That matters. The truth is, we don't get to skip the hard stuff. Not always. Sometimes we walk through fire. Sometimes we learn by losing. Sometimes life has to break us open so we can finally see what's been hurting us all along. But we don't have to stay broken. And we don't have to walk alone. Maybe you're still holding on to someone who won't change. Maybe you're standing at a door that doesn't deserve your knock. Maybe your silence is aching to be understood. Maybe someone close to you hurt you more than anyone else ever could. Maybe you're exhausted from trying to please people who will never clap for your real self. Maybe you're waiting for time to do what only you can. Or maybe you're just now realizing that you've been tolerating too much for far too long. Whatever it is, whatever you're in the middle of, I want you to know this. There's nothing weak about learning. There's nothing shameful about waking up a little later than you hoped. What matters is that you did wake up. You're here. You're growing. You're beginning to choose yourself. Let my hindsight be your foresight. Let these scars be reminders not of pain, but of power. Because sometimes the lessons that hurt the most end up being the ones that set us free. Keep going. You're becoming more than you ever thought possible. And that's something no one can take from you.